Okay, does the choir want to hear it?
Choir never knows. Just waits to see what
Preaching to the choir.
What's the band leader want to do?
What about a question and answer session?
If you like.
You have questions or answers?
The questioner and the answer all come from the same source.
Yeah. End of the meeting.
End of meeting, let's go home. Wreck the place again.
Well, you can all give a little spiel. Give us your version of it all. Who wants to start?
I'll start because you always have said to me, Bob, from the first time I met you, Nisargadatta said to you, the only way you can help anybody is to be on the need of further help. And so I've asked myself this many questions, many times. How would I know if I was beyond the need of further help? And recently, it's become very self-evident that, see, when we talk, I just said, the questioner and the question and the answer all come from the same source. But obviously, the person who thinks he's got a problem and the problem are the same source as well. So if you see that, they cancel each other out. Doesn't mean that the problem, when we talk about awareness being self-cognizing, but it's also self-resolving is a word I came up with. Self-resolving is that whatever problem you think you've got will ultimately resolve itself one way or another. It has to.
Mm-hmm.
So looking for help outside of yourself or from someone else, yes, well, you can do that. But when it comes to these psychological problems you think you've got, it's just a matter of seeing that as I said, the person who thinks he's got the problem, the thinking about the problem and the problem itself are all the same thing. So
who can have a problem?
Yeah, it sort of just drops away automatically. So in some ways, when you say, take yourself beyond the need of further help, that's what it kind of like. I saw that's what I thought it meant. You sort of become your own reference to what you think.
Oh, if there is nobody who is there to
there's nobody there that needs to reconcile anything.
Yeah.
It's all conceptual. The idea that you've actually got a problem is totally conceptual.
It's a wrong assumption.
And the idea that there's somebody who can reconcile the problem is also a concept.
Yeah.
And of course, if you think you need to look at something external to yourself to find the answer to the problem, that would also be a concept. Because the person you would go and see would only be coming from his relative point of view.
Mm.
So can he really help you resolve it in the end?
No, because if there is a you, the problem will always, no matter who you include, if there is a you, you're fucked.
So it gets down to what I always tell people: relativity.
Mm.
Relativity. Everything's relative to that imaginary sense of a separate individual which doesn't exist. When that's seen...
And what's relativity?
Relativity is duality.
Duality, yeah.
Reality is duality, where you think there's a separate individual with some sort of free will, some sort of autonomy, and it doesn't exist. So it doesn't have to reconcile anything because it hasn't actually got any problems.
Yeah.
The problems are actually conceptual.
Yes, when you label...
They don't actually exist.
You label something, and on the beginning is the word.
They're imaginary.
You bring it to existence.
They're like the blue colour in water, as Bob says. They're like the blue sky. They're like the blueness in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you think the sky is blue, it's blue.
Yeah.
It's like as long as you think you've got a problem, there'll be a problem.
Mm.
You see the sky is just a combination of scientific whatever phenomena creates a blue sky. It's the same with your problem.
Yeah.
A mental construction, like a scaffold. A
Mm.
mental scaffold's gone up.
Mm.
A mental scaffold.
And what's in the middle? The fictitious me.
Yeah. It's all built around the me.
Pottery and
Yes.
It's like the imaginary me, and you build the scaffold around it.
Yeah. And a problem assures it exists.
And the more you think about it, it's like adding another layer to the scaffold.
That's
It's
right.
like going up.
Yeah.
Mm.
How high do you want to build that scaffold?
Mm.
It can go on forever.
And what's imagining?
Yeah. What's imagining it?
What is imagining itself? Mental images.
It's just, yeah, it's where you say imaging in. Imaging, imagination, imaging in. You're bringing in images, and the images are
Phenomena.
phenomena, and you're giving energy to them, so you think they're real. And when you analyse them, you know they're not real. They drop away. End of. Nowhere to go then.
Is everything going to cease?
No, everything will keep going on as it is. The appearance will keep going on.
Who's next?
Well, does the appearance go on if there's no one there to see it?
As an appearance, yes. When you
So
wake
who-
up in the morning, yeah, it goes on. When you're in deep sleep, when thinking goes into that resting state, no.
Well, who can see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And yet it is registered.
One of the things I often do, I think is very good, is I found myself doing is, you look at the 5 elements, right? The 5 elements, the earth in the body is, of course, the skeleton. The skeleton is the hard, it's like a mountain, like a rock. It's the last thing in the body that will break down over hundreds of years sometimes. Then you've got the water, which is the blood and the lymph, right? That fills up the skin like a bag. Then, of course, you've got the fire, which is the heat created by digestion. And if that temperature in the body goes 5 degrees one way or the other, you're in serious trouble. I don't know what it is, but it's a little bit over normal. You got too high, you're in a fever and potential death.
Yeah.
So the homeostasis of the body, the heat of the body is a fire element that gives you the light in the eyes and the colour in the skin. Then you've got the air element, which is the nervous system, which sends messages around the body through the nerves to the brain. Then, of course, that all takes place within space. And I often do that. I'll often think of myself and say, well, think of myself sitting here in the chair as a skeleton. You know, there's just this bony crustacean sitting here. Then you add the water to it, you add the skin to it. You kind of like, you can construct and unconstruct yourself, right? And then you say, well, who is seeing all that? Who's able to construct and unconstruct itself? It's got to be something that's none of those things. It's got to be something apart from it that is the noumenon, that all that phenomenon appears within, that skeleton appears within, the blood and the lymph and all that. So it's a little exercise you can do as a little meditation, is sitting at the airport or something. You know, imagine yourself sitting there or look at another person and imagine them sitting there as a skeleton. And then just add the skin, add the nervous system, add the water. Then say, you know, it's just what's that word we use? Like protoplasm. It's like but what's animating it? That's the thing we have to look at. What's animating it?
The
What's
body's
giving
just
it
a
life?
bag of bones, isn't
Yeah,
it? Really?
it's a bag
But
of...
it's like
I was
saying-
told by Simon that men always do that. You know, they see people without clothes.
Yeah, well,
Dresses.
But it's like, you know, you've got the universe as it is, and for some people, oh, who made it? And that question never meant anything to me. It's just there, so just it never ever occurred that there has to be a who behind it. And it's the same for this sense of self people talk about. If you just look at all the things you mention, why do you need another step behind it? You
Well,
just got what you got.
that's where words are very limited, aren't they? You can
some
point
people
to
do,
what
some
you are.
don't. Some need another step behind because the association with the shape and form is strong, and some don't. They see it right away, like you said.
I mean, I didn't see the bodiless right away, but yeah, and that now,
Mm.
it seems like a pointless.
But if they're a step away from it or any movement behind it or yonder, what's that?
I just see no one step away. It's just,
You're just back in duality again.
it's just, that's just what there is. If you don't think about it, if you're not thinking about it, what else? There's no one or anything to step anywhere. It's just added in by some when they start thinking again. I add in other stuff gets added in here when I start thinking again. It's not that one.
Yeah, I think it is really mostly connected with the idea, a popular spiritual idea, which is potentially helpful, the idea of witness. So, very often, if you have a teacher or guru or someone, they would guide you depending on the rigidness of your identification to actually become a witness. But then you start believing that you are the witness. And you get stuck there seemingly, but at least that develops the tendency of the mind to actually observe itself from
But it's a witnessing. It's a noun, a verb rather than a noun.
That's
Yes,
what that's
it's
what
pure
Tony
subjectivity rather
that's
than
what Tony
any
is
entity.
pointing
Yeah,
out.
there's no entity there.
Some people who have this kind of temporary step to witnessing, they still didn't quite investigate what is witnessing. They didn't locate the witness. Because if they did, they would realize there is nobody there. There is no witness. Yet, the witnessing is still going on.
Yeah,
Isn't
subjectivity.
there two witnesses?
No,
No, isn't
it's
there?
not even one.
No, but I mean, there's the me as a person seeing my thoughts.
No,
No.
No, but that's
no, stop, no.
The double
no. Hang on, I'm saying
Yeah,
that's
but then
one.
He has also
That.
taught.
No.
No, but I'm saying that's not who you are.
There is no me
Yeah.
witnessing the thoughts. That's the mistake.
Okay.
That's where you get stuck,
And they're not your
Robin.
thoughts.
That's where you're getting stuck. And I tried to point this out to you last time we were together.
All right.
Okay. You making that statement would be the exact same. It would be the same as saying the me is also conscious. It's aware. The me is aware. Has to be aware if you think it's the me that's watching the thoughts.
Now, I'm not saying I think it's that. I'm saying you can think it's that. Like I'm saying that's where you get fooled.
Okay.
Who's the thinker?
Yeah, that's all in it. That's what I mean. That's the.
That's not what I heard you say.
Oh,
That's,
right.
that's not what I heard you say.
Oh.
I might have misunderstood what you said.
I
but
think
that's not what I heard.
Well, no, what I was going to say is there's just being aware of like I'm seeing now, right? And seeing is there is an active thing in it.
Just always put an ing on the end of
Yeah.
everything, and you're safe.
But
Because
there's no one who knows that it's happening. Is that?
Yeah, it does. I still think you're.
think about what I
Well, I
said.
probably am.
I still think, but I think it's a I think there's just a misunderstanding there for you, and
Yeah.
it's a. Last time we spoke,
Yep.
okay, I talked about when we first get introduced to this, we become aware because we've been introduced to this that thoughts happen.
Yep.
Yeah, they come and they go. And, prior to getting exposed to this, if you like, some people that don't even have to get exposed to this can see that, like people that sit in meditation can see that thoughts just come and go, acknowledge that, yeah. But the first introduction to being here is to look for the thinker.
Mm-hmm.
Who is actually doing the thinking? And of course, when we're first introduced to this, we say, me. Of course. Who the fuck else is going to be doing the thinking? I'm here and there's no one else here. Obviously, it's got to be me that does the thinking. Okay? And that's what Bob keeps trying to expose all the
Yeah.
time, or keep
No, I
getting
get
it
that.
good. Now, the next step from that, which in my experience I found extraordinarily difficult, which was, what I didn't realise was it was me taking ownership, or believing that it was separate from, believing that it was the me that was now witnessing the thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is the imaginary witness.
Yeah? I'm just talking about my experience.
Yeah, all right.
Now, that was kind of, I thought at the introduction to this, that all I really needed to see was that thoughts would just manifest of themselves, they would stay for a while like a cloud in the sky, and then they'd disappear. And if I saw that, and also in those thoughts that would just manifest were thoughts like, you're useless, Terry, you're never going to amount to anything, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And then that would disappear. And there'd be other,
Yeah.
all sorts of, and most of them for myself were really fucking negative. Really, really negative. All the thought patterns that used to float through my head were quite harmful. Okay? And I thought all I had to do was to see that and see what these thoughts were doing and saying to me. And if I got enough distance up from those thought patterns that were arising, somehow that just in doing that, I wouldn't be affected by them as much.
Yeah.
Okay? I wouldn't be living in them
Yeah.
and feeling them and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that was the end of it. I really did. And I see a lot of people think, got this, fucking got it. I'm awake. I've got it. Because I experienced that. I thought, got this, got it. I was so fucking far off the mark.
Yeah.
It was, you know, and then what I didn't realise, and it was, you know, when you do realise it, it's so fucking obvious, but for some reason we can't see it, you know, and there'll be statements like, yeah, I can see the thoughts, you know, which is just a thought, right? A thought that is verbally expressed, yeah, I can see the thoughts, I can see that's there, and, you know, I thought I had it. I thought I'd arrived. But I kind of still feel a bit sticky, and I kind of still feel like I'm stuck in this body, you know? And from what I'd read and from what I'd heard Bob share, I started to doubt whether I'd actually arrived. Really started to doubt it. And it took quite a while for me to be able to acknowledge and see that any internal dialogue that was going on in here in relation to that initial screen of thoughts that were floating through my mind was the real me. That was the guts of it, and it was really, really close.
Yeah, could you say that again?
Yeah, say again that last part.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try. Any internal dialogue that was going on for me in relation to being aware of thoughts that would just pop into my mind, that would just manifest, okay, whatever they were. I might have a thought about you, I might have a thought about Kat, Bob, or I might, to be perfectly honest, most of my thoughts were about me, really. And they were really quite negative. Yeah? Low self-esteem, low self-worth, you know, traumatic childhood, traumas that had happened in my life, you know. So the internal dialogue for me was pretty fucking rude. Now, what I didn't realise was that there was also, which was closer than that screen of thoughts that I was aware of that used to float through my head. There was another dialogue that was going on inside me, which I couldn't see, or I wasn't aware of it being in that initial screen of thoughts that would float through.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I just couldn't see it in there. I could see all the other stuff, you know, but there was a me that was being either affected by all the stuff that was floating through my head, or there was a me there now saying, I've got some distance up between that now, and I can see that's not me. How could it be me if I can see it? What I didn't realise is that the person that was saying, got a bit of distance up now, I can see that, and if I can see that, how could that be me?
Yeah.
That dialogue was me.
Yeah.
And it's much closer, it's quite deceptive.
But
In my
isn't that,
experience.
isn't that
Much
the
closer
wit?
to you.
But isn't that the
It's much
witnessing
closer.
though? Isn't that the witnessing? It's not a witness, and it's not the witnessed. It's the witnessing creating the two ends of the stick.
What it was an illusory self.
Yeah, well,
That's what it was.
yeah.
At the core of it, there was still an illusion here that I'm here. And it took, I don't know, it took ages for me to start to acknowledge that and actually see that. Then there was a kind of a stepping back. I don't know how else to put it, Bob. Okay. There was a stepping back from that really, really close internal dialogue that used to go on in relation to the screen of thoughts and the content out there and everything and everyone. You know. So it was seeing that I found quite difficult. But in seeing that, as soon as I saw that, like really, really saw that, that's when I absolutely realised. That's when I fully understood that there is no me, that there is no such thing as freedom, free will. That's what I'm trying to say. There's no choice maker. That really close, tight me that was seeing things and starting to parrot stuff that I've heard, read about, and you know, that was all that first screen of thoughts that you kind of become aware of it. You can kind of see stuff floating through, and even that voice that would go on in that screen, you're worth nothing, what's wrong with you, blah, 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 yeah? I could see that wasn't me. I could see that, and that I was kind of being spoken to. I was being, you know, those thoughts were being critical of me. But I thought, initially, the me was just those thoughts. The thoughts that would flow through. And then I realised that there was another really subtle me that had kind of existed much, much closer. Yeah, I don't know about anyone. All I can do is talk about my experience. It might be different for others. No idea. But there was a me that was much, much subtler and much closer. Much, much closer. That I kind of took me ages to become aware of. It's amazing. It just took me ages to become aware of that. But in becoming aware of that, that's when there was the experience was I don't know how else to put it, letting go. I just started to I just started to let go. Let go. Let go. It was there for a while because it was still trying to work out what the fuck happened. What path was I just down? You know, like kind of went down a rabbit hole a bit, you know. And now what do I do? Like, now what do I do? And I'm hearing myself say, now what do I do? And it was that, and that was just a thought too. It really was a thought. That's closer. In my experience, that in that really close internal dialogue that was going on for me, that had an opinion on what it started to see and what it started to witness out there, that internal dialogue for me, didn't show up in thoughts that I became aware of. I know that's going to sound crazy, but I don't know how else to put it. Yeah. But in really seeing that, yes, there was a little bit of a hangover. Okay, now what? Like, what do I, you know, what? No. And I would hear that. Go, well, hang on a minute. There I am. There's that sense of meanness there. Oh, there I am. Okay, and then just leave it, like literally, just leave it. Then I found that subtle sense of me got to a point where it gave up. It just gave up. Gave up the searching, gave up the wanting, you know, wanting to become, just gave the fuck up. And it didn't do that of itself. It didn't make a decision, oh, I'm just going to give up. It just happened. It just kind of, I just noticed that there was a surrender of that personalised me, an absolute surrender of it. And it just quietened down. And the only way I know how to describe that was like there was a surrender or a giving up. I don't care if I get this, I don't care if I don't get this. Like, it was neutral. There was no wanting or, you know, it was just fucking neutral. Just all quietened down. And in the quietening down of that, all the seeking stopped, the searching stopped, the wanting stopped, the desires stopped. Everything just stopped. And then, as I've said before, I just found myself sitting on my veranda outside at home, staring at the sky. And it was really, really still. For the first time in my life, I experienced stillness, absolute quiet. Everything was quiet, like profoundly so. But at the same time, everything is kind of loud because I'm hearing dogs that are barking a million miles away, and I'm hearing things, and it's like all my senses opened up. Everything opened up. Just, it all opened up. And I was quite stunned with that. Like initially, I was really quite taken by it, you know. And there was nothing else for me to do other than sit. And I just sat. You know, have a little thought would come up, reside there. And I didn't create that thought, just float, reside there. And I just sat. I sat like that for over 2 weeks. Just sat all day. Didn't have anything going on. The universe managed to work that out for me. It was fucking great. I just sat and just focused on one spot in the sky rather than on an object. Just looking at the sky, but there's no point or centre to it. Just kind of stared at the sky, and I just sat and sat and sat. And just, you can't get any closer to awareness or beingness than just sitting and being. Can't get much closer than that, you know. And what I've been trying to do the whole time through this was to get to that beingness, get to that awareness by trying to think my fucking way there. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I see this? What am I missing? What can't I see? It was all that internal dialogue that was clouding it from even being, you know, or being able to experience that, if you like. So it just dropped away, and it all just happened. It really did. It all just happened. The exhaustion of the me, that just happened. You know, it just unfolds. It just exposes itself. You know. So yeah, I just sat and I sat and I sat.
Me is really exhausting, isn't it?
Pardon?
Me is very exhausting.
Meing is terribly exhausting.
It's so exhausting.
It really
the
is.
worst child I've had.
Yeah. So there's that letting go,
Yeah.
sitting still, and one day I was sitting there, and I don't want anyone to take this on. I don't want anyone to expect that they need to have this experience, because if you expect that, you'll go looking for it. But I'll share what happened for me. I was sitting there, again just looking, and I just witnessed everything open up. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, honestly, I don't know how else to explain it, but there was just an opening up. I don't know how else to explain it, but there was an absolute opening. And it kind of took my breath for a moment and just stayed there with that. Whatever was happening, I just stayed with. I was just prepared to sit with that beingness. Sit. The beauty was that I was able to do that because all the internal dialogue stopped. It surrendered. It just stopped. So then there was the space, if you like, and just sit. Sit. Be that awareness. Be that beingness. Experience it. Notice it. And everything just kind of, I don't know, just opened. And it was at that point that I came to realise, I came to see, I am nothing, but I am fucking everything. At the same time, it was, I don't know, I still yet don't know how to properly communicate that. I don't. Maybe as time goes by I'll get better at it, but there was just an absolute void, an absolute emptiness. And yet, intuitively, at the exact same time, I knew and I realised that all of that out there that could be perceived as such was a result of that emptiness. It's one and the same thing. One and the same thing. And I don't know how to
Well done.
I don't know how to give that justice.
Excellent.
Yeah, beautiful.
Well, Buddha said, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Doesn't get much simpler than that, does it?
Yeah.
It's not a new concept if he said it seemingly 2,500 years ago, but it's now.
Ooh.
That 2,500 years ago is actually now.
It's relevant.
It all comes about because we've taken on that belief of a personal self.
Mm.
But you know, when you investigate, you're not. My body, my mind. You know you're not the body when you investigate. You know they're not mine. But what about myself? Can you say it's a personal self? Or is it that one self? Before it's translated, so why have I got the idea of myself relating to the personal self? But there never ever was a personal self. It's the one self that patterns, shapes and forms and experiences everything. And what are you left with? If you see that personal self, there's no substance or any independent. Investigate the same way as to see the body and the mind. Well, you must be left with the true self, which is the self-awareness, the self-knowing, the self-shining. And all these things will appear or express in that.
Would it be fair to say, Bob, that's the real meaning of a spiritual search? A spiritual search doesn't mean standing on your head or chanting mantras or reading scripture. It means searching for that thing you think is there and finding out it's not real. That's what a real spiritual search is to me.
And when you see it's not real, you see the search itself.
Well, yeah, the search
There's been
itself.
a problem.
The search itself becomes the problem. And this is what happens with organised religion and yoga and these things. The search itself then starts to become the problem. And that can go on for decades in some cases. Because all the energy is put into the search.
I found with me that it's... I don't like to talk about it because I don't know how to, and I don't know how to express it, but...
Give it a go.
It wasn't... the insight was that it's not even spiritual. It's just a...
That's a word.
It's
a word.
It's not spiritual. And there were a lot of glimpses, and then suddenly one day, you know, there was nothing, and it was just a thought that realised that there was nothing but everything. And then for a week I just wanted to be by myself, to just be in that space, and all the paradoxes that everything has now changed and yet everything is the same. This is the easiest thing, yet it's the hardest. Even coming here, really, it comes when it wants to come. I don't want to, I don't even know how to express that. It comes when it comes. And that's it. And then I laughed at all the emails I get from all these non-dual teachers with all these stupid... well, I guess I've got to make a living. Everyone's got to make a living. But really, you know, what are you teaching?
That's where it gets sold out, though, because when...
But they've got to make a living.
Yes,
I don't want to judge.
but when you're going to make a living, you've got to come up with new stuff or techniques or...
And
you
know,
that's
techniques to sell, or you know.
And yet it just you know, it just happens. There's no control. And like what you said, there's nothing but everything. It doesn't really...
It comes when it's least expected.
Exactly. I was walking the dog.
Yes.
And listening to my schizophrenic neighbour who was walking her dog, and she's going, and then suddenly, I thought that was funny.
Well, it doesn't have to be any special conditions or any special time or space.
I like going to shopping centres because I was down at Southland before, and I find when I go to these very spacious areas, I was walking through Target and all of a sudden I had no concept of having a body, and I thought, well, what's walking here? It's like a point of reference is walking through the space. Like, I don't know what you'd call it. It's like this, it's walking around looking at all the emptiness. It's like you become the emptiness, right? You're not a separate body walking in the emptiness. You're the emptiness, and the body, which is just an appearance, doesn't need to really appear. It has to appear when you're driving a car or something, right? You have to sort of take solid form when you're driving a car. But if you have a close look when you're walking around and try to look out the corners of your eyes, or try to look behind you, there's nothing there. It's like, as Bob says, it's like the mirror. There's nothing behind there. There's nothing there. It's just emptiness. And you're the emptiness, you're not the...
And you don't have to become that. You said you become them, but you don't have to become
Oh,
that.
yes.
You were the emptiness all along.
You're the emptiness all along. Yeah. That's your natural state. And you've bought into a false paradigm of a separate body, living a seeming separate existence with seeming free will and autonomy.
And
That's the false state.
that all comes about from the learning of the language, learning of the word.
Yes. Yeah.
There's one thing I've wondered, like when there was nothing and then the thought came up that recognised it, is there a rewiring in the brain?
Well, as it tells you in Hin Sing Ming, it says, when no discriminating thoughts arise, the whole mind ceases to be. It comes out fresh and new as something. You don't think in the same old way.
Go back to what we said a minute ago, Bob, and I think that's the problem in a nutshell. The idea that you can become something. Becoming. Because becoming is always an implication that it's in a future that doesn't exist. There's only now, there's only ever now, and there's only ever the present. So any idea of becoming...
It's not even becoming, it's recognising. in that moment, I just wondered, that's all.
Yeah, but any idea of becoming implies a future time which
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's another trap, which again, which you can be sold into as well. Well, if you keep coming along and you keep trying, and that can go on forever when you think about it, because it's always like the carrot and the donkey, sort of, keep coming, keep putting your money on the plate.
We're talking about how it's working in you, so it's your turn.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh! Me?
Yeah.
Me!
Let's hear from you, mate.
Well, I'm still a me. So
Are you?
I am. I'm still a me at the moment. Yeah.
Are you
Working
sure?
hard at it.
You've got to get rid of that.
I think I am.
Well, we might have to beat it out of you.
Maybe it's just a thought.
No, it's just really hard because I've always entangled my identity with my artistic work, and it's so hard to disentangle from that, in the sense of like I want to make a film, and I have to become a good filmmaker in order to make that film. So I'm always looking at becoming something.
But does the camera
Yeah.
have any concept that is it separate from what it's filming?
No.
Ah,
No.
but
No,
it's
and that's
the
what I
same with
find.
your eyes.
No, but that's what I find, that when I'm actually filming with a camera in my hand, I have to be, because I'm capturing
You have to think about it though.
this
No.
observational
No.
stuff that I
Yeah.
do,
So,
and I just film what unfolds in front of my camera.
well, there you are.
And I have real confidence that it's all downloaded from the universe. So when I'm
Yeah.
actually there, it's not a problem.
You're not there.
No, and I'm actually well known for that ability
Mm-hmm.
of unscreening, just unmanipulating, just capturing real life in front of me as it unfolds. And people act like actors on a stage, and they come in, they fall in from the sky, by cue. I don't ask them to do anything. They just, the universe has given them a script, and even though it's documentary, they come and play their parts. It's incredible.
Well,
And I've watched that process.
well, don't claim it as a personal me.
No, I don't. I actually say, that this is beyond me. I always
You're
say
almost
that.
a channel for the universe
Absolutely.
to express.
But I can't say that to the funding bodies
You
when
don't
I'm
have to.
pitching the film.
You don't have to.
I've got to say, I've got to use me as my identity
Yeah.
to,
It's not a problem with
You-
that.
You can use it but know the truth about it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
using your sweater and your trousers, and you don't say, I'm my clothes.
yeah,
You still use it. You don't go naked
yeah,
there.
yeah.
You use the body, you use the mind, you use the identity, you use the name, use the language, use the clothes, use the food. They're all just...
But what I have found since starting to come here a few weeks ago, is that I'm kinder with myself. So it's a very compassionate space, this, and I take it away with me for the week. And so when I find those negative thoughts coming through, trying to come in, or, I'm not going to get the funding, and, oh, I'm such a loser, and why are they choosing that person, and blah, blah, why don't they like my film, or whatever it is that's coming through my head, I'm becoming more aware of it, and mitigating against it almost, saying, no, this is really negative talk, this is the thought, just get rid of that, And actually, my happy effervescent self, it doesn't really even need to fight with those thoughts. It kind of just is winning, hands down. And so, I'm actually just naturally choosing to be in moments that are really joyful, and I go to a friend's place after work and dance for an hour. I didn't do that before.
There you
So
go.
I'm in the moment, and really just enjoying being, basically.
But if
So
we look,
slowly getting there, slowly, I think.
if we look
It's
at that camera,
perfect.
right?
It's
If that
brilliant.
camera was a human being, that
Yeah.
camera is filming that every word that's been said in here. Now that camera has no opinion.
Yeah.
It's just capturing everything as it is, as it's said, and it has no opinion about it at all.
Yeah.
It's just seeing and capturing things that is, like our eyes do.
Yeah, they're the same, aren't they?
What happens to us is we have that me with all its conditioning that comes in that says, I like that, I don't like that, that bald guy there's an idiot, he's talking rubbish, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only difference. If we can get rid of that me, we then become like the camera. We
Yeah,
see
you
everything
just see it
exactly
as
as
it
it
is.
is.
Mm.
as Bob says, Bob says it says it in Hinsing Ming, hold no opinion for or against anything.
Yeah.
I can never remember that phrase. Hold no opinion for or against anything, and you're just like the lens of the camera. You're just seeing everything unfiltered. I know, unmodified,
Unaltered.
uncorrected.
Unaltered, unmanipulated, in my field.
Unaltered, uncorrected, and unmodified.
No preference, no partiality.
It's only the mind that's
No
ever going to
comparison.
modify everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's only the mind, it's only the separate me that's going to modify it and say, well, that's good, but I've got a better idea. And if you're in entertainment, my God, you must cop that a lot. You know what I mean? Oh, her film's great, but, you know, my film's better.
Yeah, all the time. And when you say when you walked to that supermarket and you felt this emptiness behind you?
No. You are the emptiness.
Right.
See. We go through the world and say a normal state is thinking we're in the body, we're the body's separate from everything else in the world, and that body has autonomy to do what it wants, and it's got free will, and it can make choices. It's like a 180-degree flip, where you then see that you are the actual emptiness, and the body appears in the emptiness like everyone else's body appears in the emptiness. There's no separation between you or anything else. And the only thing that makes you feel separate is that imaginary idea that you're a separate individual. Right? And so you're the emptiness, and so when you see that, you realise, as Terry said, you're everything. Everything belongs to you. Everything is inside of you. The whole universe appears in you. You had to be there first for the universe to appear. Right? How could it appear if you weren't there first? And then when you say, when you were there first, it's not a you. It's a pure subjectivity. Like when I say you're a verb, not a noun. See, a noun is a person, place, animal, or thing. And as Bob says, you know thing. Right? And a verb, it just means doing. Doing. So there's a doing, a being going on. There's just no doer of the deed. It says that goes back to the what is it? The Diamond Sutra or the Lotus Sutra of the Buddha. He says deeds are done, actions happen. There's just no doer of the deed. So that goes back thousands of years as well. So.
And see, it is probably good if you would recognize that already in your daily living. Like the moment when you are doing the movie and you are in the flow and it just downloads through you, then you don't hold any concept of yourself at that moment.
No.
You don't take any credit
No.
for the movie.
No.
You know, it's almost kind of a grace.
Yes, I do.
You don't have judgment around yourself and the action.
No.
So this is precisely what we are talking about. This is the natural state. This is like a child is playing and then is bored with the toy, goes to another, but doesn't make any story about it. So this state you are experiencing, and the natural joy is there. And if you recognize that it's already happening for a lot of time in your life, it's only that thoughts that come later, oh, I have done a job, or I have done a good job or bad job or whatever. This is when it's like post factum, it's like hindsight. You recreate the self that you relate the previous action. There was no self when the download and when spontaneous flow was going on. There was absolutely no self, no ego, no judgment, no self-concept, nothing. Just how life operates the body. The body is necessary, the mind and the skills necessary, of course, and they are being used for the project. So now when Moira, you mentioned the rewiring of the brain. So yes, there have been a lot of research in the neurobiology and so on, and apparently the selfing is the neuronal network responsible for creating the separate sense of self located in the world. You want to pat on the back?
And it's 10,000s of...
What industry does it?
Your thought that I'm doing something happens 10,000 after the action's taken place. So there's no free will. That's a scientific fact. They say it's 1/10,000th of a second. That's how close they are. See, Bob uses the metaphor of the piece of iron in the fire. It gets hot, then the iron thinks it's the fire. See, your thinking is working 1/10,000th of a second behind what's going on. and it's claiming ownership of it.
And different
Why?
research says
That's
that
what
it's
she's
much
saying.
lower. It's much slower, like
about
1
half
of
a
the
second.
7th or half a second.
Yeah, whatever.
But
Thousands.
basically the network responsible for creating the self out in the brain is situated apart from the networks responsible for planning or from analyzing or from any other things. And this network can actually be disconnected by whatever 10,000 plus hours of TM
Yes.
meditation.
That's correct.
Or
yes.
so
But
so
The
it is
parietal area of the brain.
also it can be used by whatever electrodes, drugs.
Yes,
Certain
drugs,
drugs can
electrodes.
switch.
They can
off.
shut it off. They've
Absolutely.
done experiments with a helmet where they
Mm.
shut off that parietal area of the brain to create like the mystic experience of no time or space.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, they tried it on Richard Dawkins, the guy who wrote The God Delusion, and they couldn't induce it in him because that conceptualizing part of his brain had become so developed and so strong, they couldn't shut it off.
Wow.
Interesting.
I saw a documentary about it, and they could not shut off that part of his brain. Whereas they take some guy off the street who hasn't got a strongly developed intellect, and they can shut it off almost immediately, and he has that experience of timelessness, formlessness, spacelessness. And the way they proved there was no free will is they would get them filling out a multiple source questionnaire, and they would go, oh, A, B, and that part of their brain that was saying B, the brain would light up a fraction of a second after they'd ticked the box. So what's happening is you're ticking the box automatically, or the universe is ticking the box automatically. Your brain is coming in a fraction of a second later and claiming ownership of that deed, saying, yeah, I ticked A, I ticked B. And it's so close. It's like Bob says, the iron in the fire takes on that heat of the fire, thinks it's the fire. And that's what we do. We take on the idea that we've got autonomy and free will because it's working so our labelling of what's going on is so close to what's going on. If there was a bigger gap between it, we wouldn't. Say we did something, then a minute later we then said, oh, I did that, you'd know straight away. You'd say, well, that's coming. But it's so close together, as she says, the neural network
Well,
is
you're used to
like
it too.
lightning.
It's the way you've always thought, isn't it?
And it obviously develops as well, as she's saying, it develops. Because they were saying, when I watched this documentary about it, they got in Richard Dawkins, who's famous as a God basher. He wrote that book, The God Delusion.
Yep.
And they said, let's see if we can shut down that part of his brain, that rational part of his brain that creates the idea of a separate self. They couldn't shut it off.
That's interesting.
He kept overriding it.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought to myself, isn't that amazing? Because he's obviously put so much energy into developing that rational, scientific side of his brain, right? It's a complete antithesis of, say, the mystic, whose rational side of the brain completely shuts off. He's completely open, like Terry's saying, completely open, like the open space.
Yeah,
And then the rational part of the brain is kind of like squeezing everything down into this little brain, you know, where it seems to be a separate individual. And they could not induce that feeling of wholeness in Richard Dawkins. And I thought, wow, isn't that amazing?
Increase the dosage of DMT, and it will work.
No, it was it was actually a helmet actually that worked. It probed certain parts of the brain to electronically shut them off.
Yeah. Well, you can do it chemically.
Yeah.
The problem.
But you can do it experimentally.
Mushies, magic mushies.
But I mean, you just, if the mind's going through its loop, just thinking on its own, and you do a task, you know, I want to write a shopping list, it shuts up while you do the shopping list.
Yeah.
And that's an automatic function.
But look, you see it.
And that's changed, those can see it in an MRI. The
You
two
see it
networks shut down,
clearest.
one shuts the other one down.
Where do you see it clearest though? What she's saying, where do you see it clearest? You see a tennis player, for example. A tennis player comes out and says, he goes out on the court and he wipes the other guy off the court, plays shots coming out of his arse. And after the match he says, oh, you know, I was in the zone. It's like I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was just seeing the ball the size of a basketball, and I was just flogging it. I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about winning or losing. I was just in the moment, in the present, and he plays like he's never played before. Why? Because he got himself out of the way. That neurotic, oh Jesus, you know, that nervous, neurotic person who would have been worried about winning or losing's not there anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember, you know, years ago
So
when
function
this
as I
used to
say.
happen to me when I used to go out and do photo jobs. And I hate that camera.
You want it off?
No, it's all right. It was interesting when I did jobs and I didn't understand it, and it was actually frightening because I would come back with these photos because I wasn't there, it was just happening. And it was a weird, now I understand and it's okay, but it was, yeah.
But isn't it just the body knows how to do it itself?
Yeah, get yourself out
You
of the
know,
way.
you get your mind out of the way. and
You
it just does
function
it.
better. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You function at a higher level of intelligence when you're not there.
Yeah.
Well, you want to have a look at it. Look, obviously, none of those organs are a bit of good if that life essence is not going through that body.
Yeah.
It's the life essence that's doing it, not the same life essence that's functioning in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not digesting. You're not saying to your stomach now, listen, that burger you had an hour ago, you keep digesting there, keep digesting, You just don't do it, do you? It
Well,
just
you don't have
goes
to
on
think about
automatically.
driving the car or walking down
No.
the street or anything. It just happens automatically.
Yeah.
But the problem is when well, this has been happening to me for years, but when you start giving up this notion of becoming,
Yes.
and I grew up in this environment, you know, where everybody had to achieve, they're all overachievers, and success was, you know, was basically identified or related to, you know,
Don't they wear you
academic or
out?
monetary success, yeah, or whatever. So it was very difficult to escape that kind of conditioning. But I have been finding over the last years that I don't want to become anything.
They wear you out.
That's a
though.
good goal to have.
I just don't want. I don't want to be anything. I just want to sort of like just relax, really, you know, and be in the moment. But I find that it's a real struggle living in this society because you have to work, and in order to work, you have to become.
Do
You
you,
know,
do you feel worn out around those type of people when you're around a group of people? Always.
I just try not to hang out.
Yeah,
Well,
they
that's-
wear me
that's
out.
the point.
Just
What's
don't
the
think
background?
about it. Like, don't think
Oh,
about it.
jeez.
Things will be changing all the time. So you will be becoming, let's say, older or whatever, or wiser or whatever. But if you don't think about it, it will just be taken care of by life.
Yeah, because I just feel more and more and more that work is such a waste of time. There's such a precious life, and to pour all of this life into these.
Yeah, you
But-
may find yourself walking off,
Well,
walking
what
out.
brought you here?
Who
What
knows?
brought you here? Tell us what brought you here. What brought you here? What brought you here?
Well, I like the message. I
Where
like
did you
what-
see the message?
Oh, a friend, Padma. I was doing.
So you saw the message and something in you said, hang on a minute, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going along,
Absolutely.
see what's going on there.
Yeah.
What's that? What, there's some intelligence there, isn't it, that's dragged you along.
Absolutely. I'm trying to understand exactly what Bob is trying, the message he's trying to get across, and essentially that we don't exist, essentially.
Yes, so see,
As a separate entity.
Yes. And I really want to feel that. I want to
What will
feel.
happen?
Yeah.
When it's-
But it's
I
already
want to
happening.
feel-
Yeah.
No, I think it is already happening.
it's
I wanna
happening
feel
for a
I'm
lot
part
of time.
Yeah.
So drop,
Just see when it's not happening, what obscures it.
Yeah.
so drop the wanting and it'll happen much easier.
A lot of people who first come here will say, oh, you know, when I'm at the meetings, I feel this sense of awareness and space and timelessness, and as soon as I walk out the door, I'm back into all the shit of the world. No. The awareness is there 24 hours. What happens is the mind kicks back in, and that separate entity that's got to go to work and all that shit takes you, seemingly takes you away from the awareness. When it doesn't, the awareness is there 24/7. So it's only ever conceptual that you've moved away from it. See, that's probably the most common thing you hear from people coming here. Oh, you know, I had it, then I've lost it.
No, it's
Then
not
I
that
had
I've
it
lost
again.
it. It's just I don't want to be at that workplace. I don't want to be around those people. I would much prefer to spend my time around.
But you can be around them.
Yeah.
But you know what Jesus said? He said, be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he means.
Yeah.
What if you felt the
Be
same
in
way
the
as when
world,
you
but not
do
of
the
the world.
movie? Like you do your film and you hang around those people and you're in the same sense of flow, same
Sorry.
sense of the universe using me. That wouldn't be a problem. The problem is only there because when you are around these people, you don't want to be there, you want to be somewhere else, you want to be doing something else.
Yes.
So there is a resistance towards what is. But the real freedom is when you experience that freedom, even when you have menstruation, even when you have headache, and even when you are surrounded by people that are crazy. The freedom comes from within. It's freedom regardless of circumstances. Not only in the moments when it's pleasure and I'm in the artistic, like flow and the muse is taken me, but also in the mundane normal things like washing dishes, carrying the water, chopping the wood, even in these moments. So see, you have very, very good sort of a grab on that sense of flow when you are doing something that you were born to do. So now see, how are those moments different to the moments of resistance? I don't want to be around these crazy people, they're nuts, life is wasted, we should be doing only valuable stuff. So what is the difference really? Difference is the inner dialogue, the talk that, no, I don't want it, this is wrong, this is waste of time, waste of life. This is, if that sort of if that inner dialogue wasn't there, but you were, like, if you were in that sense of that stage of no self, there wouldn't be anyone who would say, oh, this is wrong, I shouldn't be here. The sense of belonging and being one with that moment wouldn't be obscured.
Because
by
you're not
those
present, are
ideas.
you? Because if you're always thinking about, I should be doing something better, you're not in the present.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're
you're in the
conceptualising
head.
about some imaginary
That's
future.
it. That's exactly.
Some better
Yes.
place in the future that you can move to or become.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's it.
And there's another biblical
Yeah.
saying Jesus said, wear the world like a light garment. Don't take it too seriously. I mean, as we were talking about all this shit before the meeting, if you take all that shit seriously, you end up in a nut house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
true.
Talking about the church and pedophiles and
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton and
Yeah.
you end up in a nut house.
You might notice the moment
You'll never reconcile it.
flow just stops.
You'll
and
never
something else
reconcile
comes
it.
in, and you just sit with
Ever.
that little change.
No, what you were
It's
saying
noticed
is
it.
right.
Mm.
That's right. That's what you're saying is perfectly correct. 100%.
Tony, you want to say something?
Yeah, you were saying something.
Nothing's coming up. Oh, no, I was just saying to her that just if you sit with that moment where the flow stops and something else comes in, and just then you start to see some unraveling, unfolding, or something.
Yeah, it's a good place to actually really have a nice look what is going on there when that resistance comes in the picture.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you actually see, and then this is where sometimes you first kind of identify with the witness that is aware of the resistance, and then you realize that even the witness is not even there in the picture. But first, as Terry was saying, if you can actually see what is going on, that resistance in a seeming distance, like you are watching it as the movie on the screen. It's not me being, in the midst of that resistance, but it is kind of happening in the awareness. That's the first place, recognizing what the body is doing. You can see the knots in the stomach, a lump, the breathing, the tension. You can notice how that resistance is appearing in the body, how in the emotions, what the inner dialogue goes with it, like, shit, what a waste, This stuff is all happening. And watch it as if it was on the screen. Body is the screen, feelings are the screen, but there is a knowing of it, and you are the knowing of it. You're not the content. It feels like, when you kind of embody that model, you identify with it. It feels like, this is me, I'm suffering, I'm wasting my life. But when you actually step back and you see, okay, there is a thought, I'm wasting my life, and that thought appears in the body as knots in the guts and stress, and that same thought appears in the mind as mental pictures of something else, and you actually see it in a way as the content, then you are already different from the content. This is the first step. You're waking up from the first layer of the dream. You actually realize that thought created the reality. Reality is neutral. It doesn't have any judgment. There's nothing good or bad. But the thought has rewritten the whole story of that moment. And now you're waking up from that thought. And now the next step is actually who is looking, who is aware, because it may feel like, okay, I am the awareness. Very beautifully described. It's this very subtle difference. Like, you know, I am aware of what is going on in my head or in my heart or in my body or anywhere. I am the awareness of it. But I, the awareness, now I've got it, and in a moment I won't be getting it. The trick is the one who is watching the witness ultimately doesn't exist. It's just the knowing, pure knowing. There's nobody who knows it, but it's just the knowing. So the knowing, you see, you know the body, you know the thought appeared, you know the thought has kidnapped the body and made it tense and made it, created mental images, reinterpreted people in the room, job, everything. That very thought just superimpose another reality on completely neutral fact of sitting, breathing, doing whatever. So now you're waking up from this thought. And the trap that mind offers is, I woke up now from the thought. It's still better than sitting identified.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's what Terry said that wasn't him.
Yes.
It's still an exponential move away from a separate me, the poor me. It's not, like you said, it's not where he needed to be, but it's still an exponential jump away from poor me, I'm suffering in the world. Is to step back and see yourself as the witnessing, right?
Yeah.
So don't sort of think you have to take this quantum leap.
No.
Because it may seem to it's happening to you incrementally.
Yeah.
Most of us have been coming here for years and years and
no,
years.
it is happening incrementally.
And it does seem to happen like incrementally until you realise, well, no, it wasn't happening incrementally. It was only now all the time.
Yeah.
It was just my mind that thought it was happening incrementally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like go with the flow. That's what came up in my mind. We use that saying all the
You
time.
do, don't you?
Go with the flow.
Yeah.
Like Bob says, the river.
Yeah.
And then we take that bucket of water out and try and hang on to what's happening instead of going. And we know it in our language. We say that all the time. Just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Don't resist.
But we don't. We get that big bucket of water out. Some people take a friggin' bathtub of water out, you know, and try and hang on to it. I do. I take a friggin' one of those great big friggin' water trucks full out at a time sometimes, you know.
But everyone goes with the flow anyway, but some go with the flow with a lot of suffering and complaining.
You're
on
going
the
with
way.
the flow. That's the paradox, isn't it? You're
Yes.
going with the flow anyway. Now, you can either suffer and go with
That's
that poor
right.
me down the river, or you can go down the river without that poor me. And it's a lot better to
enjoying
have no
the
poor
ride.
me.
You can really enjoy the ride.
Some people are trying to dog paddle back upstream.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, do the backstroke up the river, you know, and they wonder why they're not getting anywhere.
The analogy I like to use. I haven't heard it
That's
anywhere.
all
It's just
sometimes.
it's just something that came up. Is whilst I was a seeker, whilst I was trying to become, whilst I was trying to find, whilst I was trying to get better, brighten up, be happier, all that stuff. Whilst I was in that state, I was like a tree. And I'm talking about a big tree, like a really big 50-foot high tree, with all the roots down in the ground. Yeah. Obviously been there for a long time, the tree. And I'm the tree. And what I was doing, whilst I was a seeker, whilst I was trying to find my way out of, I was holding on with every single fucking root that was in the ground constantly, because I thought if I let go, the tree's going to fall over.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So that's the tension. I don't know how. That's just the tension
Yeah.
that I was carrying in my body.
Yeah.
All there's like that hanging on,
Yeah.
just like a tree.
Yeah.
I'm hanging on.
Yeah,
The wind
yeah.
would blow, and I go, oh, I've got to hang on a bit
Yeah,
harder.
yeah,
You know, that was just an analogy of being buffeted by life.
yeah.
You know, and just feeling like I really needed to hang on. You know,
Yeah.
and I kind of went pop, and let go of the hanging on. The tree wasn't going anywhere. Didn't have to hang on at all. Didn't have to hang on at all. and the whole tree relaxes, if you like,
Yeah.
and then just becomes a tree. That point that you made an interesting point before,
Yeah.
when you said, you know, some thoughts arise,
Yeah.
but you've found
Yeah.
that you're in a pretty good place,
Yeah.
and they don't bother you too much. It's like you've got a handle on it. Like,
Not a handle, no, but I can.
I'm paraphrasing.
Oh, yeah.
What did you say? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I can see them. I can see them, you know, and you know, if they start to affect me, those negative thoughts, I find myself saying, you know, it's like, go away. It's like, you know, I don't need you here. You know, it's like,
Right,
and my joyful self is pushing it away, kind of thing. You know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Those thoughts that are coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember earlier
Yeah.
when I said there's a screen of thoughts
Yeah.
that come up?
Yeah. Yeah.
That thought in you that's arising, just push it away.
Yeah.
That's that close me I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
That needs to be seen for what it actually is.
Yeah.
It is only
Yeah.
another thought.
Yes.
But what it does, it's so cunning
Yeah.
and it's so close
Yeah.
and hard to get distance between it. It's
Yeah.
quite hard
Yeah.
to get distance between it.
Yeah.
It's easy to get distance between the stuff that you can kind of see and just floats through your head.
Yeah.
Because it's so close, what it does is it identifies with the body and it identifies with the source of presence and it identifies with awareness.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is here, that me doesn't exist. It's not there. It's total imagination. It's illusory. It just comes up. It's just a thought only. And what you're left with is, yeah, but I'm still here. I'm still, and I still feel stuff in my body, and I still feel separate. I don't feel connected. I certainly don't feel like I'm everything. I don't feel like I'm empty. That'd be great. Just to empty out, that would be great. I don't feel that either. That's how close it is and how difficult it can actually be to see. And you can catch it in your own dialogue. Like I caught it coming out of you when you were talking.
Right.
Yep, there's some thoughts that go on, but you know, basically it's kind of like, there's the good part of me,
Yeah.
there's the happy part of me that goes, it's all okay.
Yeah.
It's that one that's going, everything's okay. That is the one that's close.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That feels it's either in control, it can choose, I can push it away, I can not accept it.
Right. Right.
It's close.
Right.
And just like you see those initial thoughts that come up that you're describing,
Yeah.
you need to be able to see that me that's ever so close the same way.
Okay. Right. I see.
So it's deeper. It's a lot deeper than just becoming aware of, thoughts that just float through my head, you know, because there's still a me there going, I see it. I'm aware of it. I see it. What
you
now?
can set up the duality of thought fighting with thought then. You know what I mean? What Terry's saying is as long as that me is there, which is a thought, and it's analysing the thoughts that are coming up, well, that's two things, duality, but they'll tend to fight each other. The thought me is a thought, is analysing the other thoughts.
Yes.
No, how's that ever going to reconcile itself when you think of it?
Closed loop.
It can't reconcile itself, can it?
No.
But
Self-referring thoughts. So
Yeah.
the thought refers back to the thought to prove that it's the thinker. And it's
But randomly, that's what Eckhart's awakening was. Oh, it's two. There can't be two. That doesn't make sense. I don't get that one, but apparently that worked for him.
Who's this?
Eckhart Tolle, he said he saw two cells and there couldn't be two cells and that woke him up. I
Right.
don't get it, but apparently it's a thing.
all I'm doing is pointing.
Yes.
You need to see
Yeah.
what it is
Yeah.
that's being conveyed to you.
Yeah.
Don't take what I say to be something. Don't take what I say to be, that's an interesting concept. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah?
Yeah, it's certainly.
Yeah, the idea, and it's easy, and look, that's kind of okay too, because initially we kind of do that.
Yeah,
We do.
Yeah.
In anyone that says they don't, full of shit.
Yeah.
We do.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do.
You might not
But
have
you're-
just said that,
you're-
you might do
you're-
both.
The sense that I get from you is there's not a whole, and I might be wrong, okay? But the sense that I get is there's not a whole ton or heap of suffering going on in there.
Yeah.
Not a ton of it.
No.
Not certainly compared to what was going on over here.
Right.
That's the sense I get.
Yeah.
But I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. What your knee's displaying now might not be what's really going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
So normally, a great motivator for people
Yeah.
is pain.
Yeah.
A great motivator for people is suffering.
Yeah.
What the fuck I've got to get, like, I'm fucked. Yeah? That can generally be a motivator. But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that. It really, really doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
You're kind of, you I don't know, you're in an okay space. Yeah, okay, I don't want to be at work, and I get that.
Yeah.
Who fucking does?
Yeah.
Not many people.
Yeah.
Most people want to fucking run away from their job.
Yeah.
But you have moments of reprieve at work where you disappear.
Yeah.
You've already told us that.
Yeah.
You actually disappear.
Yeah.
Fucking lucky you. And most people don't get to experience that.
Right. Okay.
So that's so awesome.
Right.
You know
yeah.
it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So all I would say,
Yeah.
and there's a gentleness, I don't know, but all I would say is just try, if you can. I'm not quite sure how aware you are of this, the thoughts that come up. I'm not sure, because we haven't had a conversation,
Yeah.
okay? But generally there's thoughts that are happening pretty much fucking non-stop until you get in your quiet moments,
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah.
It's generally about self or others, or it's always in relation.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always, even in relation to yourself,
Yeah.
it's always in relation.
Mhm.
Yeah. And relation is just the split. Relation is duality. That is the split. Okay? So, yes, become aware of all the dialogue that goes on instead of being it.
Yeah.
To become aware of it and to
Yeah.
be aware of it, you've got to be separate from it.
Yeah.
Have to be.
Yeah.
Like you can't be aware of something if you're it.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah? So there's automatically separation.
Yeah.
Now for me, I walked around my whole life believing that what I was what floated through my head.
Yeah.
There was no separation from it.
Yeah. Right.
None.
Right.
Zero. I was it.
Uh-huh.
And I lived in that.
Yeah.
No wonder I felt traumatized all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
No wonder I was in a constant state of anxiety.
Yeah.
No wonder I constantly felt isolated and alone and fearful.
Yeah.
Of course. if you knew what used to, if what floated through my head floated through yours, you'd be the same. You just would.
Yeah.
So you kind of become it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've already started to be able to see, oh yeah, stuff kind of comes through. And sometimes it's a bit yucky, some of the thoughts that you're aware of
Yeah.
that come through, but it's okay. There's a more gentle, higher, softer part of myself that sees that, and I can just I see it for what it is and
Yeah.
just choose not to put any attention on it.
Yeah.
Great. And you'll do that for as long as you need to do that.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll get to a point where you will start to need to try and identify what is it that's also feels it's a higher self, it's a weller self, it has the capacity to shun thoughts, move its attention away from thoughts. It's that close need that I was talking about that can be really difficult to see, because in my experience it kind of didn't show up as blatantly as the normal thoughts that float through my head. So the normal thoughts that would float through my head there was a subtler me, there was a subtler thought that kind of wasn't there that used to come in that would have an opinion on that. Want it, not want it. Yeah. Higher than, lower than. Getting it, not getting it. Why can't I get it? What am I missing? All that stuff. I can see I'm not my thoughts. Now what? And the thought, I can see I'm not my thoughts. Now what is what needs to be seen, not that. But initially, you got it?
Yes.
Okay. But initially what we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
is we see that. And it's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary. But then there's this subtle thought that arises. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's what needs to be seen.
Who is saying now what?
Yeah. And it is closer.
And who's saying now what? Who is?
Yeah,
Find out.
that's it.
That's where you need to be looking.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it'll just happen. Yeah. There's no pressure. It's just something that it kind of unfolds for you. You just start to become aware, and things start to unfold, and you start to see things.
It's kind of the opposite approach that's worked for me. It's like they use the phrase quite often here, I am that, like I'm already that. And for me, it was like I think Peter said, might have come out of some acting thing, but you know, just put the coat on and wear it. What's it like if you're wearing that coat? So for you know the phrase, you know, what's wrong if you're not thinking about it? And what do you get? Like if you pause a thought, what do you got?
Nothing.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's it. And so, so you know, that would it would come up. The point itself would just pop up. And like for me, there's never, or for at least for a couple of years now, there's never been a sense of decision making, or it's just things that are just popping, like movements, like I'm here. That's it. There was, and that only comes up if someone asks why you're here. But I'm not somewhere else. You know, just, there's no planning, decision, none of that stuff. So that was already kind of quite strongly, it's just certain all the time that it's just happening. And then, well, it's not that it's not certain, it's just not uncertain either, it's just not a thing, and it does, activity seems to come in that area. And so quite often, or yeah, what's going on here if there's no thinking happening, if there's no labelling, if there's no, you just got, yeah, you know, some sensations or some visual memory or snapshot or something. And you know, you can't even answer a question if you're not thinking about anything. You know, there's just, it can come up a little bit later. Oh, what's there if you don't think about it? You check in, you go back to not thinking, and clearly nothing can be said. And it's that kind of thing. So it's always coming from the other end. It's more what works here. So some of these things that people are saying are definite steps you have to have, I don't have. But then what also happens that maybe they don't have is persistent, like the body tension Terry was talking about. There's like I was watching a bit of movie, but because I've been kind of very relaxed in a way I'm not used to, it was just like, oh my god, this tense body, oh my god, and there it is, it's just tense again, and it's just watching this movie, it's gone into tension again, it's constantly triggered, and I can quite quickly see the abstraction of it, and more lately not even own a little bit, you know, or own a bit, and then quite, it will just really not even feel personalised at all. After a second or two or few, sometimes, you know, so it can actually not even be fearful anymore, you know, it's not even really, it's just a situation that's happening, you know. But that is, so it's that thing about like a sense of it, like the thoughts coming up were probably useful, and I saw them at Bushman's retreat, so I probably don't know if I've always been an observer of what's going on in the head, but really seeing them pop up as separate thoughts I might not have really done until I first went to an duality thing. But I've lost track because I don't take mental notes in this sort of area, so that's I lose track. Other work here I take mental notes, and I know what mental note taking is. I just do a lot of it, but really it just doesn't happen here. And it's like it just doesn't happen. It's not like there was some anyway. So I lost track. Will it come back? We'll see. Oh yes, I don't really see that as a thing. I never really saw that as the thoughts as a self, and I never I never saw what's going on here as a self. But I think I use the term granularity for what you're saying like, because I guess we all just have different spatial conceptions and different times, so it's more like they're coming in, you know, so they're either coming in quite fine ones or they're coming in fat, obvious ones. And sometimes it's a little real clear ownership thought, you know, and then it might drop off halfway through because it's, so it's just, you just see the more subtle ones, like, you know, Bob would say, what's wrong, you're not thinking about, or what's the other one you use, the full stop. And then I do the full stop and then I think, oh, this is a boring living room. But it's like, but where did that boringness come from? It was a very subtle thought that it didn't even get, even probably hasn't been properly really picked up, although it doesn't really happen anymore. But there was just some resistances that may have had tiny words that aren't actually picked up. But sometimes when you start to actually see them, then they are their little words, you know. And yeah, but at the end of the day, at some point you just care much less that any of that's even happening. And churn can still be very strong and triggered even more as stuff gets exposed that didn't used to be exposed. And the thoughts about that mattering or being a bother, or it just might constantly flash in that they really, nothing can be said about it anyway, so it's all completely light and not really real. It flashes in quite a lot, you know. And it really is just like flashing in, things are flashing in, and they're clearly just whatever's evolving and unraveling. And that's flashed in, that's a load of shit too, because when I did Google what do physicists even know, and it's like they haven't actually discovered anything that they've theorised about. And there may be a plasma, and there may be some strings, but they haven't found atoms, or they haven't found molecules, or any of that stuff. It's just, it appears to us to just pop in, but we really can't say anything about it when we do that shut off, you know.
When she said that saying, when she said at the end of the day, when does the day actually finish and the night start? No, a serious question. When does the day finish and the night start?
Officially?
When you think
You
about
We
it,
have a
it's
conceptual
all about-
idea
you
that
have
when
the
the sun
ephemeris,
goes down and
yes.
it gets dark,
That's right. Yeah.
But from the point of what Terry's
Observe.
saying, right, day and night appear within you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So from the point of who you really are, there is no day or night, or there is no time. They're
No.
just conceptual constructs that we see in nature. Oh, the sun comes up, we'll call that the start of the day. The sun goes down, it gets dark. Well, that's not, the sun doesn't come up and the sun doesn't go down. The earth's rotating,
Yeah.
we're told,
Mm-hmm.
and the sun seemingly comes up and seemingly goes down. So scientists will tell us what's really happening is the earth's rotating, we'll face the sun for 12 hours, it will seem light, and it will rotate, and it will seem we're facing away from it, so it seems dark. But do you have any concept of the world spinning? We're not going around and around now, are we?
No,
Right?
no.
I think you actually are doing 50,000 kilometres an hour, actually. But
They say that, don't they? They say like we're going at this really fast
miles, isn't
speed.
it?
The end of the day.
It's registering, it's not registering on a very conscious level. You know.
But we know, what my point is, we make these arbitrary points. We say, oh, at the end of the day. We're picking out, like a film editor does. He'll pick out a beginning,
Yeah.
and then you have the film that runs for a while, then he'll say, all right, you stop, because I do film editing, so you put in your starting point, you put in your ending point. Isn't that exactly the way the mind works?
Yeah.
A thought will come up, it runs for a while, then it will seemingly stop.
Yeah.
Right? So can it be ultimately the reality?
No.
Well, it can't be, because the field that appears within is what? Emptiness, nothingness. So you can't conceptualize, you can't perceive it, you can never say what it is, but you can only say what it's not. It's not the body, it's not the mind, it's not the thoughts, it's not the emotions, it's what's left over, which is nothing.
When you're not thinking about it.
That's all you can do.
And that nothing, it never really have any preferences. That nothing never really says that it should be different. It never says that there's anything wrong. That's why Nisargadatta says that actually, the only thing you can say about being one with everything, is nothing's wrong. Nothing is wrong anymore. So if there is any sign that something is wrong, there is already that person subtly coming back in the picture. Because the universe, the totality, the absolute is pure perfection. The non-conceptual awareness, pure perfection. Now that idea that something is wrong is obviously separated from the pure perfection, is in the opposition to the pure perfection. So any idea that something is wrong invites the investigation, and the investigation
Haven't there been
blows it up.
all these incredible people who have done amazing things in this world?
Seemingly,
Because they have this impulse that something is wrong, or something needs to be fixed, or something needs to be
Seemingly, yes.
discovered in the world.
Yeah,
It could have been. It could have happened this way.
Einstein, take
but
Einstein for example.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessarily.
Behind the camera.
what's powering Einstein though? What's powering him?
Plus, who cares what the commentary was going on in the head? There was an impulse from the body for a new discovery, or there was some sort of a movement happening. And now, whether the thought comes and say, "Oh, the world is rotten and let's create atomic bomb and blow it off," or whether the idea says, "Oh my gosh, I feel the inspiration. There is something beautiful coming up. I'm on the track on it." Whether the idea is this or idea is that or any other commentary goes on, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that the energy built up and made the scientist discover something. What story he told himself is completely irrelevant.
But every time I hear that story about the deepest, profoundest stuff, it was just like your flow. For me, you know, the poetry or some of the stuff that comes up, it's just like, fuck, that's pretty cool. Couldn't have thought of that. You know, it's just flowed. And, you know, the what things seem in the fire, the guy, you know, the apple falls near the head, whatever. Yeah, they're having a rest when it all comes. It's the flow.
Next time you're editing a video, just
Right,
stop
so-
and have a look and see how closely our paradigm it is to the way that your thinking works. The way you edit sequences out in and out of it. Because that's what you're doing when you're thinking. You're basically editing what's going on. You're taking out certain things and saying, "Well, I like that. I don't like that," or "that section's good." It's just like you're looking at editing a film and you say, "I'll keep that part, I'll ditch that part, I'll keep that next part," and you join it all together to make a story. Isn't that exactly the way thinking works? We tend to be attracted to the good things, pleasure, excitement and that, and we want to disregard the negative things, the things that make us unhappy.
Sometimes we're just attracted to the drama, and you keep
Yeah.
out all the things that
Some
are
people-
boring
yeah.
and bring up the dramatic
Exactly.
ones.
Some people,
Yeah.
we call them drama queens, don't we? The people who will edit out all the good things.
And that's the best movies.
Yeah.
When they're dramatic.
Keeping the dramatic things.
They'll edit out all the good things and the bad things, and they'll just keep all the things that
Crazy.
you know, yeah, all the crazy things.
Either way, they just serve the story. They serve the story. Everything we do seemingly serves the story.
The movies are all different.
Mm.
But it all revolves around me. That's the point. The whole lot is normally revolving around me. Me as the centre, as the star of the show, as the person who's running the show.
There's often bunches of thoughts that aren't
Me,
big
me,
ones,
me,
and
me
there's
and mine.
ones.
Me and mine.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
Robin next time.
I said a few things.
No, you didn't
Julia
have your
smile.
version
No.
of it. Or life will be running.
Thanks, Tony.